The escape pod drifted through the endless dark. Stars twinkled in the distance, cold and uncaring. Inside, Vayani sat curled in the small space, her violet-tinted skin glowing faintly in the dim emergency lights. The bioluminescent patterns across her arms flickered, once a sign of health, now fading with exhaustion. She was alone, completely, utterly alone. The food supplies had run out 2 days ago. The oxygen was thinning. The control panel flickered warnings in Xalith script, but there was nothing she could do. The pod's thrusters had failed hours after she had launched. Now it was just her and the void. Vayani exhaled shakily. She had always known this day would come. The High Council had exiled her for defying their ancient laws. The Xalith were meant to remain hidden, never interacting with other species. But she had questioned that rule. Why should they hide while the galaxy thrived? For her crime, they had placed her in this pod and cast her away. She shivered and hugged her knees, her dark silver hair falling over her face. The temperature was dropping. Soon, the life support would fail completely. Maybe it was better this way. Better to let the void take her than live as an outcast. Her eyes fluttered closed. Then, a voice crackled over the pod speakers. Unidentified vessel. This is the UHS Endeavor. Do you copy? Vayani's breath caught. Human. She stiffened, her heartbeat pounding in her ears. She had heard stories of humans. Aggressive, war-loving creatures who fought for control of the galaxy. The Xalith elders had warned that humanity was dangerous, unpredictable. If they found her, what would they do? Would they treat her as an enemy? Would they even let her live? Unidentified vessel. The voice came again, steady, calm. Your ship appears to be disabled. We are approaching for rescue. Hold tight. Rescue. A low rumble vibrated through the pod as something massive moved close. Through the tiny window, Vayani saw a ship, a human warship, dark gray with glowing blue thrusters. It was colossal, easily 100 times the size of her tiny pod. Metal arms extended from its hull, reaching out. No. Panic surged through her. She fumbled with the pod's controls, but there was nothing she could do. The engines were dead. The ship's arms latched onto her pod, pulling it in like a predator catching prey. Vayani pressed against the wall, chest rising and falling quickly. A loud hiss filled the air as the pod's hatch unlocked. The door opened. 2 human figures stood in the bright light. One was a tall man, broad-shouldered, with steel-gray eyes and short dark hair. His uniform was black and blue, sharp and professional. He did not look cruel, but she knew better than to trust appearances. Behind him stood another human, a woman with dark skin and sharp eyes. She held a device in her hand, scanning the pod. The man stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. My name is Captain Dorian Vale of the United Human Systems. You're safe now. Safe. Vayani's throat tightened. No one had ever called her safe before. But humans were liars. She knew that much. Still, as her vision blurred from exhaustion and hunger, she had no choice. Her legs gave out, and everything went dark. Vayani woke up to warmth. For a moment, she thought she was dreaming. The air around her was fresh, filled with a faint, strange scent, something clean, artificial, but not unpleasant. A soft hum vibrated through the floor beneath her. She wasn't in the pod anymore. Her eyes snapped open, and she sat up fast, panic rushing through her veins. She was lying on a bed, covered in a light gray blanket. The walls around her were smooth metal, lit with soft white lights. Strange machines beaked beside her, displaying symbols she couldn't understand. Then she noticed them. 2 humans stood a few feet away. One was the man from before, Captain Dorian Vale. He watched her with those sharp, steel-gray eyes, his expression unreadable. The other was a woman, Dr. Mira Solis, with dark brown skin and short, curly hair. She held a device in her hand, its screen glowing softly. Vayani's breath caught in her throat. She was on a human ship, 1,000 thoughts crashed into her mind at once. She had to get out. She had to escape. Humans were dangerous. Everyone knew that. What did they want from her? Why had they taken her? She shoved the blanket off and swung her legs over the side of the bed, ready to run. "Wait," Dorian said, his voice calm, steady. "You're safe." Safe. That word again. She didn't believe it. Vayani's glowing violet eyes darted between them, searching for deception. Her people had warned her about humans. They were aggressive, warlike, unpredictable. She had no weapons, no way to defend herself. Where am I?" Her voice came out hoarse, weak. "You're on the UH Endeavor," Mira answered, her tone softer than the captain's. "We picked up your distress signal. Your pod was failing. If we hadn't pulled you in, you wouldn't have survived." Vayani's hands clenched into fists. She didn't like feeling helpless. "You had no right," she snapped. "You should have left me." Dorian exhaled, crossing his arms. "I don't leave people to die." His voice held no arrogance, no demand for gratitude, just simple fact. That threw her off. Most of the Xalith leaders she had known spoke with pride, with superiority. This human didn't. She narrowed her eyes. "What do you want from me?" Dorian exchanged a glance with Mira. The doctor sighed, stepping closer. "Right now, just for you to rest," Mira said. "Your oxygen levels were dangerously low when we found you. Your body was shutting down. We gave you nutrients and stabilized your condition." Vayani swallowed hard. She had felt weak before, but now she felt stronger. Even the dizziness in her head was gone. "You helped me?" she asked, hesitant. "Of course we did," Mira said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the universe. Vayani's mind reeled. Her own people had cast her out without hesitation. And yet, these humans, supposedly violent, ruthless, had saved her life. She didn't know what to think. Dorian stepped closer, watching her carefully. "Can you tell us your name?" She hesitated. Revealing her identity felt dangerous. But at the same time, they had already seen her. There was no use in hiding. Finally, she lifted her chin. "Vayani." Mira smiled. "Nice to meet you, Vayani." Dorian gave a small nod. "Get some rest. We'll talk when you're ready." Then, to her surprise, they left her alone. No locked doors, no guards, just an open room and a choice. Vayani sat in silence, her mind a storm of confusion. Maybe everything she had been taught about humans was wrong. Vayani sat on the bed, staring at the open doorway. No guards, no restraints, no prison cell. Humans were unpredictable. That much was true. But this made no sense. She had expected interrogation, maybe even threats. Instead, they had saved her, healed her, and left her alone. Her violet eyes flickered to the tray on the small table beside her bed. It held a plate of food. Golden brown bread, steaming soup, and a strange red fruit. A bottle of water sat next to it. They were feeding her. Vayani's stomach twisted. She hadn't eaten in days. But was this a trick? Was the food drugged? Poisoned? She hesitated, then sniffed the soup carefully. No strange scent. The steam warmed her face, and her body ached for it. Finally, hunger won. She picked up the spoon and took a sip. Warmth spread through her chest. The taste was rich, simple, nothing like the cold, processed rations her people ate. She took another sip, and another. Before she knew it, she had finished the entire bowl. She sighed, setting the spoon down. It wasn't a trick. A soft beep made her tense. The door slid open, and Captain Dorian Vale stepped inside. Vayani straightened, her body going rigid. This was it. Now he would demand answers. But he didn't. Dorian crossed his arms, leaning against the wall. "How are you feeling?" The question caught her off guard. She blinked, unsure how to answer. I don't know." Dorian nodded as if he understood. "That's fair. Silence stretched between them. Vayani studied him carefully, his broad shoulders, the sharp lines of his face, the way his steel-gray eyes seemed both intense and calm. She finally asked, "Why are you being kind to me?" Dorian exhaled, "Because it's the right thing to do." Vayani frowned. "You don't even know me." "I didn't need to," he said simply. "I saw someone who needed help, so I helped." His words unsettled her. That wasn't how the galaxy worked. The Xalith only helped their own. Other species acted with selfish motives. Power, debt, survival. But humans, they were different. She crossed her arms. "And what if I was your enemy?" Dorian gave a small half-smile. "You're not." Vayani stiffened. "You don't know that." He shrugged. "Maybe not. But I trust my gut." His gut. That was ridiculous. Xalith decisions were made through logic, careful calculations. Trusting instincts was reckless. And yet, his instincts had saved her life. Before she could respond, Dorian pulled something from his pocket, a small silver device. He placed it on the table beside her. "This is a translator," he said. "It'll help you communicate with the crew. I figured you'd want some freedom to move around." Vayani stared at him. Freedom. He was giving her access to his ship, just like that. She should have been relieved. Instead, all she felt was confusion. "You trust me?" Dorian tilted his head slightly. "Let's say I'm giving you a chance." Vayani looked at the device, then back at him. She had spent her whole life surrounded by rules, restrictions, and judgment. The Xalith had never given her a chance. Humans had every reason to fear and distrust her, but instead, they had done the opposite. She slowly reached out and picked up the translator. Maybe, just maybe, she had been wrong about them. Vayani walked carefully through the halls of the UHS Endeavor, the translator device clipped to her ear. She had expected the ship to feel cold and lifeless, like the sleek, metallic cities of her own people. But instead, it was filled with movement, voices, and warmth. Humans passed her in the corridors, nodding in greeting. Some whispered, but no one glared at her with suspicion. No one treated her like an outcast. It was unsettling. She had spent so long believing humans were cruel, selfish, warlike. Yet all she saw here was efficiency, purpose, community. She didn't know what to do with that. Her feet carried her toward the command deck, where she had been told Captain Dorian Vale would be. The doors slid open with a soft hiss, and she stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, glowing blue from the massive display screens showing star maps and tactical data. Several officers worked at their stations, but her eyes went straight to Dorian. He stood near the central console, speaking with a woman Vayani recognized, Commander Elise Rowe, his second in command. The commander had short platinum hair, sharp blue eyes, and a presence that demanded respect. Vayani hesitated, but Dorian noticed her instantly. He gestured for her to come closer. "Glad you're up and moving," he said. She nodded. "I needed to think." Elise studied her carefully but didn't say anything. Vayani could feel the commander's skepticism, but it wasn't the cold rejection she had known from the Xalith. It was measured caution, as if she were waiting to see who Vayani truly was. Dorian tapped a few buttons on the console, bringing up a screen filled with alien symbols. Vayani's heart nearly stopped. Xalith war plans. She froze, her glowing violet eyes scanning the files in disbelief. "This is," she started, her voice barely a whisper. Dorian's expression hardened. "A communication intercepted from a Xalith outpost. It confirms a large-scale operation. A fleet is moving in secret." He paused, then said carefully, "Toward human space." A chill ran down her spine. It was true. She had heard whispers before her exile, rumors that the High Council had grown uneasy about humanity's expansion. But to see it laid out like this, Vayani clenched her fists. "You have no idea what's coming." Dorian exchanged a glance with Elise. Then tell us. Vayani hesitated. Helping humans meant betraying her own people. But was it really betrayal, when the Xalith had already cast her aside? She took a deep breath. The Xalith believe humans are dangerous. Too unpredictable, too ambitious. They think your kind will spread across the stars, disrupting the balance they've kept for centuries. Illis frowned. Balance? By controlling who gets to advance. Vayani nodded. Yes, the High Council believes they are protecting the galaxy, but they're not. Her voice darkened. They're afraid. Dorian's gaze didn't waver. Afraid of what? Vayani's throat tightened. Afraid of what happens when humanity refuses to be controlled. The room fell silent. Dorian exhaled, rubbing his jaw. Then we need to be ready. Illis nodded. Her sharp blue eyes locked onto the data screen. If they think they can crush humanity before we grow too powerful, they won't wait. We need to assume an attack is coming. Vayani watched them work together so effortlessly. No power struggles, no hidden agendas, just a determination to survive. It was something that Xalith had never understood. And at that moment, Vayani made her decision. I can help you, she said. Dorian met her gaze, and for the first time, she saw something she had never seen in any leader of her own kind. Trust. Vayani had never thought she would stand beside humans, let alone help them. Yet here she was, on their ship, offering them secrets that could change everything. Captain Dorian Vale and Commander Elise Rose stood before her, waiting. Their eyes held no fear, no hesitation, only readiness. It was strange. The Xalith would have questioned her, doubted her loyalty. But these humans, they simply listened. Vayani took a deep breath. The Xalith fleet will not attack in open battle. They prefer precision. They will strike your key systems first: communications, supply routes, command centers. By the time you realize the war has started, it will already be too late. Dorian's jaw tightened. Elise tapped a command into the console, bringing up a galactic map. Red markers flashed over several human colonies. If they strike here, they can cripple us before we mount a defense, Elise muttered. Dorian glanced at Vayani. Can you confirm their targets? Vayani hesitated. She knew the Xalith's tactics, but revealing them felt like tearing away the last connection to her people. Yet, had they ever truly been her people? Her own kind had abandoned her. The only reason she was still breathing was because of the humans standing in front of her. She lifted her chin. Yes. Dorian gave a small nod. Then let's stop them. A test of trust. A short time later, Vayani found herself in the ship's war room. The walls glowed with holographic displays, showing fleet positions, possible attack routes, and enemy intel. Officers studied the maps, making quick calculations. Vayani felt out of place among them. Yet, no one treated her as a threat. A voice pulled her from her thoughts. You're sure about this? She turned. Lieutenant Kieran Locke stood beside her, arms crossed. He had dark auburn hair, sharp green eyes, and a constant look of quiet intensity. I wouldn't be here if I wasn't, Vayani replied. Kieran studied her for a moment before nodding. Good. He glanced at the map. The captain trusts you. That's rare. Vayani's chest tightened. Trust, something she had never been given before. I don't understand it, she admitted. Kieran gave a small smirk. Yeah, most people don't. Before she could respond, Dorian's voice filled the room. We need to move fast. If Vayani is right, the Xalith will strike within the next 72 hours. He turned to her. You mentioned stealth ships. How do they remain undetected? Vayani stepped forward, pulling up a diagram on the screen. They use pulse-dampening fields, a technology that masks energy signatures. But it's not perfect. If you disrupt the field with a focused electromagnetic burst, they'll be exposed. Elisa's eyes flickered with interest. That gives us a chance. Dorian nodded. Then we prepare an ambush. A murmur spread through the room. Vayani felt the weight of their gazes. They were acting on her information, trusting her, relying on her. She had never belonged anywhere before. But now, standing among these humans, she felt something she never expected. Purpose. A choice that changes everything. Later, as the ship prepared for battle, Vayani stood by the viewport, watching the stars. Footsteps approached. She turned to see Dorian. "You don't have to do this," he said. "We can find a way to get you to safety." Vayani shook her head. "I don't want safety." Dorian studied her. "Then what do you want?" She looked back at the stars. The same stars she had once seen as cold and distant. Now, they felt different. "I want to fight for something that matters." Dorian gave a small nod. "Then welcome to the fight." For the first time in her life, Vayani wasn't alone. She had made her choice, and there was no turning back. The USS Endeavour hung in the vast darkness of space, silent and waiting. Vayani stood on the bridge beside Captain Dorian Vale, her glowing violet eyes fixed on the holographic display. The Xalith fleet was coming. She could feel it in her bones. Commander Elise Rowe paced near the strategy table, her sharp blue eyes scanning for updates. Lieutenant Kieran Locke stood nearby, checking weapon systems. The tension in the air was thick, but no one panicked. Humans did not break under pressure. Dorian exhaled slowly. Any sign of them? Kieran shook his head. Not yet. Vayani's fingers tightened against the console. They were out there, hiding, waiting. She had told the humans everything she knew about Xalith stealth technology. If her calculations were correct, the fleet would try to slip past their defenses using pulse-dampening fields. But she had also given them a solution, a counterattack that could turn the tide. If it worked, a soft beep filled the room. Then another, then dozens. Kieran's green eyes locked onto the screen. "We have movement." The room fell silent. Elise stepped forward. "Confirm." The display flickered as scanners picked up faint distortions in space. Not visible ships, but something moving, bending the light around them. Vayani's breath caught in her throat. "There they are." Dorian's voice was steady. "All ships, stand by." The trap was set. The humans would not strike first. They would wait until the Xalith believed they had won, until they were too deep to escape. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, the Xalith fired. The ship rocked as energy blasts slammed against the shields. Alarms blared. Officers shouted commands. The battle had begun. Dorian remained calm. "Activate the EMP pulse." Elise hit the command. A surge of electromagnetic energy rippled through space. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, the enemy ships flickered into view, their cloaking fields collapsing. Vayani's heart pounded. It worked. "Targets acquired," Kieran called. "Firing now." The Endeavor's cannons roared to life, sending streaks of fire through the void. Other human ships followed, unleashing their full power against the stunned Xalith fleet. Explosions lit up the darkness. The Xalith had expected an easy attack. Instead, they had walked into a storm of human firepower. Vayani watched in awe. The humans fought with a raw, relentless energy, not with cold calculation, but with instinct and determination. They adapted, they pushed forward, and they never gave up. The Xalith had feared this, and now she understood why. Face to face with the enemy, the battle raged on, but Vayani knew the Xalith would not retreat easily. She turned to Dorian. "They will send boarding teams." As if on cue, the comm system crackled. "Captain, we have Xalith ships docking onto the hull." Dorian's expression hardened. "Prepare for close combat." Kieran grabbed his rifle and tossed one to Vayani. "You coming?" She hesitated only a second before gripping the weapon. Yes, she was. They ran through the ship's corridors, alarms flashing red. Vayani's body tensed as the bulkhead door exploded inward. Xalith warriors stormed inside, tall, silver-skinned, their eyes burning with cold precision. Her own kind. But they were no longer her people. A Xalith soldier raised his weapon, aiming at Kieran. Without thinking, Vayani fired first. The blast hit the warrior square in the chest, sending him crashing to the ground. Kieran gave her a sharp look. "Remind me not to get on your bad side." Vayani barely heard him. She had just shot one of her own. There was no turning back now. The battle inside the ship had begun, and Vayani was ready to fight. The UHS Endeavour shook as more explosions rocked the ship. The Xalith had forced their way inside, and now the battle wasn't just in space. It was inside the ship itself. Vayani pressed against the corridor wall, breathing hard. Her glowing violet eyes darted toward Kieran, who crouched beside her, gripping his rifle. "They're coming," he muttered. She could hear them, the rhythmic, precise footsteps of Xalith soldiers. They moved in perfect coordination, unlike the fast, unpredictable tactics of the humans. But Vayani knew their weaknesses. She turned to Kieran. "Xalith armor is strongest in the front. Aim for the sides and the joints." He gave a sharp nod. "Got it." Before they could say another word, the enemy appeared, tall, silver-skinned warriors, their eyes cold and unreadable. They raised their weapons. Vayani didn't hesitate. She moved first, ducking low and firing at the nearest Xalith. Her shot hit its mark, piercing through the weak spot at his side. The warrior staggered before collapsing. Kieran followed her lead, taking down another enemy with a precise shot to the knee before finishing him with a second blast. But the Xalith didn't break. They kept coming, relentless and silent. One lunged at Vayani. She barely dodged in time, feeling the heat of an energy blade slice past her shoulder. Pain flared, but she gritted her teeth and struck back, driving her weapon into the warrior's chest. Another enemy turned toward Kieran, raising his rifle. Vayani threw herself forward, knocking the Xalith off balance just before he fired. The shot went wide, scorching the metal wall instead of hitting Kieran. Kieran didn't waste the chance. He fired point blank. The last Xalith fell. Silence filled the corridor, broken only by their heavy breathing. Kieran looked at Vayani. "You okay?" She nodded, pressing a hand to her wounded shoulder. "It's nothing." He gave her a smirk. "I'll believe that when you're not bleeding." She almost smiled, but then the ship's comm crackled. "This is Captain Vale. All forces report. How many Xalith still on board?" Elisa's voice came through next. "We've cleared most sectors, but some are still holding the engine room." Vayani's eyes widened. "They're trying to disable the ship." Kieran cursed. "If they take the engines, we're dead in space." Vayani didn't hesitate. "Then we stop them." The final stand. Vayani and Kieran raced through the ship, dodging fallen debris and sparking wires. The closer they got to the engine room, the hotter the air became. When they reached the entrance, they saw Xalith forces already inside, setting explosives near the ship's reactor. If those bombs went off, the Endeavour wouldn't just be crippled, it would be destroyed. Dorian's voice came through the comm. "We don't have time. You need to stop them now." Kieran glanced at Vayani. "You have a plan." She nodded. "We need to separate them. Xalith fight best in formation. If we break their ranks, we have a chance." Kieran smirked. "Then let's break them." They moved fast. Kieran threw a grenade down the hall, sending a shockwave through the engine room. The Xalith were forced to scatter, momentarily disoriented. Vayani darted forward, using their own confusion against them. She fired, taking down 2 enemies before they could react. Kieran covered her, his shots fast and precise. The humans weren't as strong as the Xalith, but they didn't need to be. They were faster, smarter, unpredictable. One of the Xalith reached for the detonator. Vayani lunged, knocking him to the ground. They struggled, his strength almost overpowering her, but she gritted her teeth, twisted his arm, and forced the detonator from his grasp. With one final push, she fired, ending the fight. The last Xelith fell. For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the ship's reactor. Then Dorian's voice came through the comm. Status. Karen exhaled. Explosives disabled. Engine room secure. A pause, then Dorian's relieved chuckle. Good work. Vayani stared at the fallen Xelith, her chest rising and falling with deep breaths. She had chosen her side, and there was no doubt in her mind. She had chosen the right one. The UH Endeavour drifted peacefully through space, the battle now over. The Xelith fleet had been destroyed, their remaining forces scattered or taken prisoner. Vayani stood on the bridge, watching the stars pass by. She had been part of the victory, part of something bigger than herself. The adrenaline was starting to wear off, leaving her with a strange, quiet sense of peace. Dorian stepped up beside her, his dark brown eyes scanning the starry expanse. He still wore his captain's uniform, his posture relaxed, but his face still holding a quiet intensity. You did good, he said, breaking the silence. Vayani turned to look at him, her violet eyes glowing softly in the dim light. We did good. Dorian smiled. True, but I have to admit, I wasn't sure what to expect when we first met. I didn't know if I could trust you. Vayani's expression softened. I didn't trust you either, but I was wrong. He nodded. It happens. A soft beep interrupted their conversation. Elise, the ship's second-in-command, walked in, her platinum hair shining even in the dim light. She gave them both a quick glance. Captain, we've received a message from the fleet. They're requesting a debrief. Dorian sighed, looking at the communication console. Right, the formalities. He turned to Vayani. You ready for this? She nodded, her face steady. She had been a stranger to this world, a wanderer among people she had once viewed as enemies. Now she was part of a team, one that had given her a place, even though she had none to call her own. As the debrief began, Vayani stood beside the command table, listening to the reports from the other ships. The humans spoke with clarity and confidence, discussing strategy and logistics. They worked like a well-oiled machine, their minds focused and their spirits high. For the first time in her life, Vayani felt connected. A new role. After the meeting, Dorian walked with Vayani through the ship. The corridors were quieter now, the sense of danger having faded into the past. You know, Dorian said, glancing at her with a thoughtful look, I've been talking to the crew. They all agree. You've proven yourself in this fight, but you could do more. Vayani stopped, her curiosity piqued. More. Dorian gave a small smile. We've got a lot of training, a lot of positions to fill. You know more about the Xelith than anyone on this ship. You've got the skills. How would you feel about joining the crew full-time? We could use someone like you. Vayani blinked, surprised. She had never thought of staying. Her mind had always been focused on survival, not on belonging. But now, standing beside Dorian, looking at the crew working together, she felt a warmth she had never known. She had no home to return to. But maybe she could make a new one. Are you offering me a position? She asked carefully. I'm asking you to be part of the team, Dorian said. We're stronger together. Vayani considered it for a long moment. She had lived her life with guarded caution, never truly letting anyone close. She had always been an outsider, a stranger to everyone. But with these humans, Dorian, Elise, Karen, they made her feel different. And maybe that was enough. She smiled, a soft, genuine smile. I'll join. The future ahead. The UHS Endeavour would continue its mission, exploring the stars and defending humanity from the dangers lurking in the unknown. But Vayani's journey had only just begun. She stood with the crew now, not as a stranger, not as a former enemy, but as a trusted ally. The humans had given her a second chance, a chance she never thought she'd have. Dorian patted her on the shoulder. You won't regret this. Vayani looked at him and nodded. For the first time in her life, she felt like she had a purpose, a place where she belonged. And as the ship sailed forward into the vastness of space, she knew that whatever challenges awaited them, they would face them together.